Welcome back to the next installment of U.S. History with Mr. Chavez. Great to have you as always. So today what we're going to be talking about is General George Washington and sort of what he did to make a dent in Great Britain in the English military, English army of during the American Revolution. So what were some of the key things that George Washington did? One thing that we've learned about, we've already discussed, is his Fabian tactic, right? This is something that isn't necessarily widely talked about by historians on every front, but it's super important. And we've discussed this. So General Washington, he'd be in the middle of a fight. He'd recognize he'd weigh the battle, what's going on both sides. And if he recognized his side wasn't about to win, he would use what's called a Fabian tactic. And they would pivot to a different point and they would flee the battle. So that was one way that, in a lot of ways, that American troops were preserved throughout the American Revolution. It might have been seen as weak, but he was strategic and he really didn't want to lose any of his men. Another thing that George Washington was key in was disciplining and structuring his forces. He recruited various soldiers from the Hessian military to help whip the colonists into shape in doing drills. If men began to mutiny or they decided they weren't really wanting to be a part of the military when they were signed on to do so, he would often resort to, which maybe not often, but there were times where he had to resort to hanging mutinous soldiers, which was an unfortunate event, but it was a way of keeping discipline in the ranks. He dealt with lack of supplies, lack of weapons, lack of boots, lack of clothing. And so General Washington, along with his staff, Alexander Hamilton, John Lawrence, these individuals, they would petition Congress, they would petition local state legislators for goods, for supplies, for support, which was vitally needed. So General Washington, aside from that, there's a lot of different things we can discuss, but aside from that, he was this hero, he was this symbol of American freedom that allowed for soldiers and colonists to look to in order to see a way out of the situation they were in this calamity-filled war. And really, so in really a lot of ways, he kept the hope, he kept the motivation, the optimism alive for the colonists to eventually defeat the British military and come off, as the winner of this long, drawn-out war, the Revolutionary War.